அங்க 5 o'clock நமக்கு 7:30யா? அங்க 5 o'clock நமக்கு 7:30. இல்ல நீ உள்ள 7:30 அப்ப. பார்த்தேன் என்னடா?
Hare Krishna. Damodar Prabhu, I need my screen to be shareable.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavatana.
Okay, am I audible?
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay, all right, okay. Let's resume. We're in chapter 5. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur has taken up a vow to chant the holy name of Krishna, which means chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. In Sri Mayapur, he had taken up a vow of chanting Shatakoti Nama, 1 billion holy names. Now, generally, the equivalent of 1,100,000 holy names is taken to be 64 rounds of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Haridas Thakur used to chant 192 rounds per day while he was preaching. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur also took up that vow. Now, in addition to chanting, he was doing different things, as I had already mentioned. He had written a commentary on Chaitanya Charitamrita. He was managing the Yoga Pit and so on. Okay. In commenting on this period, Srila Prabhupada states, from childhood he was a strict brahmachari, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj, and he underwent very severe penances for starting this movement, worldwide movement. That was his mission. When the roof of his kutir became broken, rather than take time away from his chanting, he would simply use an umbrella when it rained and go on chanting. Sometimes he had to go to different places, but he continued very strictly and completed his vows always. In 1906, Sri Rohini Kumar Ghosh, the nephew of Chandramadhav Ghosh Mahasaya, a former justice of the Calcutta High Court, had a wonderful dream and as a result approached Siddhanta Saraswati for initiation. The boy had gone to stay with some Bauls, a so-called guru, and his consort, who he was instructed to address his mother and father. These persons were actually sinful rascals in the guise of devotees. But while he was in Mayapur, he had the good fortune to hear from Siddhanta Saraswati for a long time. He returned to the place of the Baul, and feeling ill, he lay down to rest. In a dream, the Baul took the form of a tiger, and the consort the form of a tigress. They were about to devour the unfortunate lad who was trying his best to take shelter of Lord Gauranga. At that moment, Siddhanta Saraswati arrived on the scene, chased the tigers away, and began to lead him to Mayapur. The boy awoke at daybreak and proceeded to Mayapur, where he heard discourses from Siddhanta Saraswati for several days. Finally, he begged for initiation from his savior so feelingly that Siddhanta Saraswati took mercy on him. Prior to this, Siddhanta Saraswati had never given initiation to anyone. His character was such that he never regarded his disciples as his disciples, but he used to see them as being that which was received from the lotus feet of his guru. He used to address them as Prabhu. In his address to the Gaudiya Math's first Vyasa Puja, he has addressed his disciples as my friends, rescuers from danger. He also wrote, if a Vaishnava does not do the work of a guru, then the spiritual Vaishnava lineage will stop. Again, if he does the work of a guru, then he becomes a non-Vaishnava. For if a guru thinks I'm a guru, then he becomes a guru, which means he becomes a cow. A real guru does not make disciples and thus remains a guru. Here we see Siddhanta Saraswati, and there should be double quotation at the end of this, remains a guru. Here we see Siddhanta Saraswati giving a very strong warning about entertaining the conception of overlordship or being the master of anyone. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur often spoke about a guru as being the counter correlate of a shishya. I think I should explain what that means in simpler language. Okay. We have certain words which can only be understood which can be understood as the opposite of something else. Take, for instance, the word father. The father can only be understood in terms of how do I indicate this? In terms of offspring, son or daughter. Similarly, husband, wife, husband, offspring, father or mother, actually, parent, let me put it. Similarly, teacher, student. But there are also other types of expressions, for instance, heavy, light. So these are pratiyogis, counter correlates. When you talk of one, you are talking in relation to, not in relation, to contrast it with something else. Now the word guru in Sanskrit can either mean a teacher or a master, one who gives knowledge to someone. So as such, it can refer to relation. So in this context, the counter correlate of a guru is a shishya, a disciple, one who gives a bona fide mantra to someone else. The giver, in that situation, the giver is a guru and the receiver is a shishya, dikshita shishya, initiated disciple. He might teach someone, so in which case he is considered the shiksha guru and the other person is considered a shikshita shishya, a shiksha disciple. In either case, this is a relationship. It is a relational expression here. But the same word guru has another meaning. It can mean heavy. And the counter correlate of that is light, which in Sanskrit is laghu. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur often spoke about the guru as being the opposite of laghu. Now here, this is very different because guru and shishya is a relational expression. If a guru does not, if a person does not initiate anyone else and does not instruct anyone else, then he cannot be considered to be a diksha guru, nor can he be considered a shiksha guru. Just like you, there's no meaning to saying, I'm a father, but I never had any child. Or I'm a mother, I never had any child. It's meaningless. You become a father or mother only when you have a child. Similarly, one becomes a husband when he has a wife. One becomes a wife when she has a husband. One becomes a teacher when he has a student. One becomes a student when he has a teacher. So in this, these are all relational expressions. One requires the other in a particular relationship. And when we say father, today I became a father. That means I have a child who's born today. But I'm only the father of that particular child. I'm not the father of everybody. So it is a relational expression. It is valid. I'm a father. The statement is valid only in relationship to a particular person who's related to me. So when you say I'm a wife, when a woman says I'm a wife, she's a wife only of her husband. There's no such thing as a wife or a father. He's a father. He's a father with, but he's not a father of any particular person. So these are relational expressions. However, when we talk about something like heavy, heavy is used to contrast it with light. But an item can be heavy and it does not need to be surrounded by anything light. It can be surrounded by other items which are all heavy also. This is an objective description. So sometimes, like in the Guru Ashtaka of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, for instance, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is talking about a perfect pure Vaishnava in the Guru Ashtaka. He is a Guru. He is heavy with Krishna Prema, pure Krishna Prema. So that is a Guru. And he's the counter correlate of a Laghu, a Sadhaka who is very light with affection for Krishna. So that conception also is presented by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He often spoke about this. I think that a number of times we confuse between these two. And that is one reason why there are some misconceptions. Certain scriptural statements are only referring to a person who is Guru in the sense of being heavy, a person who has full love of Godhead. He is accepted in the scriptures as a Guru, even if he does not instruct anyone, even if he does not initiate anyone. He is heavy. He has love of Godhead. He can save the whole world. He is said to be Guru. He is simply carrying out Krishna's will in this world. On the other hand, when Krishna orders him, he also becomes a Guru of this type. He gives Diksha, he gives Shiksha, and so on. And he accepts certain persons as his disciples, trains them out. So this is something that will keep coming across again. And a number of statements in the scriptures and in the writings of our acharyas refer to Guru in this absolute literal sense. Not necessary that anybody who is receiving instruction from X receives instruction from Y, and therefore Y is the Shiksha Guru of X, and the Shiksha is bona fide, and therefore that Y is automatically meant to be related to in terms of all the scriptural statements about a person who's actually only a perfect pure devotee. We'll come across this again, clarifying. Right now I'm just introducing this concept. Here we see Siddhanta Saraswati giving a very strong warning about entertaining the conception of overlordship or being the master of anyone. His divine grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada observed that when he offered obeisances to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he used to return, Dasosmi, I'm your servant. And in a lecture in 1973, on the occasion of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's Disciplin's Day observance, Srila Prabhupada in the same ecstatic mood said, anyway, it is by his grace I was forced to give up my family life. And he brought me some way or other in preaching his gospel. So this is a memorable day. What he desired, I'm trying a little bit, and you're all helping me. So I have to thank you more. You're actually representatives of my Guru Maharaj because you're helping me in executing the order of my Guru Maharaj. Thank you very much. In the course of Siddhanta Saraswati's travels throughout India, he became much pained at the erroneous teachings of many pseudo-sects and Sahajiyat groups. There arose in his heart a burning desire to widely preach the true Siddhanta according to the desire of the 6 Goswamis and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Although Srila Gauranga Das Babaji ordinarily never allowed anyone to touch his feet, he had voluntarily placed his feet on the head of Siddhanta Saraswati and ordered him to preach extensively and advised him to preach the absolute truth and keep aside all other works, which from that we understand that no longer Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur continued his scriptural research on the field of astrology and so on. Siddhanta Saraswati said of this occasion, on receiving just a touch of the lotus feet of my Sri Gurudev, I lost all sense of this external world I do not know whether any transcendental agent equal to him in greatness has ever appeared in this world. How may those who are busy with the lust, anger, etc. of the world ever know him? This is all brought out in Bhagavatam. Now, Gauranga Das Babaji Maharaj was actually a perfect pure devotee. He was an Uttama Vaishnava, first class devotee. And a first class devotee is defined here. Here, the most advanced devotee sees within everything the soul of all souls, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Sri Krishna. Consequently, he sees everything in relation to the Supreme Lord and understands that everything that exists is eternally situated within the Lord. And then there's a definition of a second-class devotee and a third-class devotee. But then since the first-class devotee's definition is not so clear, the Bhagavatam provides further details about the first-class devotee. Even while engaging his senses in contact with their objects, one who sees his whole world as energy of Lord Vishnu is neither repelled nor elated. Elated means delighted. He is indeed the greatest among devotees. Within the material world, one's material body is always subject to birth and decay. Similarly, the life air, prana, is harassed by hunger and thirst. The mind is always anxious. The intelligence hankers for that which cannot be obtained. And all of the senses are ultimately exhausted by constant struggle in the material nature. A person who is not bewildered by the inevitable miseries of material existence and who remains aloof from them simply by remembering the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is to be considered Bhagavata Pradhana, the foremost devotee of the Lord. One who has taken exclusive shelter of the Supreme Lord Vasudeva becomes free from fruitive activities which are based on material lust. In fact, one who has taken shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord is free from even the desire to enjoy material sense gratification. It's not that he just doesn't engage in sinful material activities or sinless material activities. Does not even have the desire for it. Does not even the propensity. Propensity comes before desire. Does not even have that. Plans for enjoying sex life, social prestige, and money cannot develop within his mind. There's no possibility of that. Thus, he is considered Bhagavatottama, a pure devotee of the Lord on the highest platform. Birth in an aristocratic family and the execution of austere and pious activities certainly cause one to take pride in himself. Similarly, if one enjoys a prestigious position within society because his parents are highly respected members of the national social system, one becomes even more infatuated with himself. But if despite these excellent material qualifications, one does not feel even a tinge of pride within himself, he is to be considered the dearmost servitor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When a devotee gives up the selfish conception by which one thinks this is my property and that is his, and when he is no longer concerned with the pleasures of his own material body or indifferent to the discomforts of others, he becomes fully peaceful and satisfied. He considers himself simply one among all the living beings who are equally part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such a satisfied Vaishnava is considered to be at the highest standard of devotional service. The lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are sought by the greatest of demigods such as Brahma and Shiva, who have all accepted the Supreme Personality of Godhead as their life and soul. A pure devotee of the Lord can never forget those lotus feet in any circumstance. He will not give up his shelter at the lotus feet of the Lord for a single moment. Indeed, not for half a moment, even in exchange for the benediction of ruling and enjoying the opulence of the entire universe. Such a devotee of the Lord is to be considered the best of the Vaishnavas. How can the fire of material suffering continue to burn the hearts of those who worship the Supreme Lord? The Lord's lotus feet have performed innumerable heroic deeds, and the beautiful nails on his toes resemble valuable jewels. The effulgence emanating from those nails resembles cooling moonshine, or it instantly relieves the suffering within the heart of the pure devotee, just as the appearance of the moon's cooling light relieves the burning heat of the sun. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is so kind to the conditioned souls that if they call upon him by speaking his holy name, even unintentionally or unwillingly, the Lord is inclined to destroy innumerable sinful reactions in their hearts. Therefore, when a devotee who has taken shelter of the Lord's lotus feet chants the holy name of Krishna with genuine love, the Supreme Personality of Godhead can never give up the heart of such a devotee. One who has thus captured the Supreme Lord within his heart is to be known as Bhagavata Pradhan, the most exalted devotee of the Lord. And Sri Gauranga Das Babaji was of this status. Actually, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was also of this status. And Bhaktivedanta Thakur was also of this status. But by Krishna's will, to make us understand how to serve a bona fide spiritual master, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati behaved in this manner. There are many people who wanted to become his guru. But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, one of his greatest contributions to this world was presenting a careful distinction between perfect pure devotees and impure devotees. Throughout his writings, we will notice it. Very, very careful. Doesn't let you have a vague misconception. Puts things very, very clear. This is perfect pure devotee. This is not perfect, but pure devotee, sadhaka. At least pure sadhaka. And this is an impure sadhaka. By Krishna's will, each acharya highlights a particular topic that is required for his particular audience and which may be required in the future also under particular circumstances. They are all Krishna's mouthpieces. Vaishnavas and Brahmanas. In 1911, a great controversy arose over the relative positions of Brahmanas and Vaishnavas. Various caste Goswamis, members of different Smarta groups, etc., raised a huge agitation, and so a great conference was organized in the Midnapur district of Bengal to settle the issues. Famous pundits, scholars, and spiritual leaders from all over India were to attend. The contents of the Karma Jada Smartas, that means the Smarta, the people who were addicted to following the materialistic injunctions of various Smriti scriptures, where even if a person appearing in a Shudra family is initiated by Pancharatrika initiation according to the Vaishnava scriptural rules, still he remains unfit to worship Shalagram Shila, anyone not taking his birth in a Brahmin family. Brahmin family means in a biological, if you want to say, meaningless, seminal Brahmin family, cannot perform all the duties of a Brahman. Even if he's an Uttamadhikari, Uttama Vaishnava, he can never become an Acharya, which means he cannot accept disciples, he cannot train them, he cannot give initiation, he cannot give instruction, and so on. Actually, some of them accepted that they could give instructions, but they cannot give initiation. Unnaturally hyping up Pancharatrika Diksha over Bhagavata Shiksha. This was the Smarta's attempt to establish their seminal successions as the legitimate and supreme spiritual authority and to prove the inferiority of the Vaishnavas. They were incensed at Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's preaching in the line of Srila Sanatana Goswami, which had gained increasing acceptance, that anyone regardless of birth could become a Brahmana and a Vaishnava and was fit to offer Vedic sacrifices, worship the deity, etc. Of course, this was a conflict with a long history. In the past, exalted Vaishnava acharyas who were born in non-Brahmana families had initiated persons who were born in Brahmin families, because it was understood by the Vaishnava acharyas that in the age of Kali, everyone is Shudra by birth. Qualification comes by training and temperament. Guna karma. Sri Shyamananda Prabhu had initiated Sri Rasikananda, although Shyamananda was not a seminal Brahmana. Srila Narottam Das Thakur had initiated two seminal Brahmanas, Ganganarayan Chakravarti and Sri Ramakrishna Bhattacharya. Narottam Das Thakur himself was not born in a Brahmin family. Aside from the historical precedents, there were many scriptural evidences supporting this practice. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur was invited to the conference, but he was bedridden at the time with rheumatism. Exasperated, he wrote down. He said, no one manifest in the Vaishnava world who is capable of meeting with them and by the conclusions and original logic of the scriptures put an end to their lowly activities, which are nothing but the frenzied dance of the three material qualities. At this, Siddhanta Saraswati then wrote an essay entitled Brahman O Vaishnava Taratamya Vishayak Siddhanta, which means the conclusion concerning the gradation between Brahmana and Vaishnava. That is a gradation. A genuine Vaishnava is superior to a genuine Brahmana. So there's a gradation there. So he presented the conclusion, which means you need to analyze all different points of view and provide sufficient scriptural evidence and come to conclusions in a logical manner. He then read it to Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. This was actually published later on, and it has been translated into English. It is a good book, very, very good book. At some point, hopefully, we should study it. He then read it to Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. The Thakur was so ecstatic when he heard the powerful logic and scriptural evidences put forward by his brilliant son that he sat up and proclaimed, Saraswati, truly, truly Saraswati. Saraswati means one who possesses all knowledge, all relevant knowledge. Truly, truly, he is the Acharya's son, illuminating the face of the Vaishnava world. Acharya Bhaskar, the sun like Acharya. By the light of these judgments, the darkness of the Karma Jada smartest doctrine will certainly soon be dispelled. At 3 p.m. on Friday, the 8th of September 1911, the meeting was to begin at Midnapur district at Bali Ghai, Uttapur. Siddhanta Saraswati set out from Calcutta, accompanied by a follower of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur called Sri Yukta Suresh Chandra Mukhopadhyay on September 6th, in attendance at the meeting where Srila Madhusudan Goswami from Radharaman, Vrindavan, Srila Vishwambharananda Dev Goswami from Srila Shyamananda Prabhu's line, and the follower of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur called Sri Sitanath Bhakti Tirtha Mahasaya. All of them saw to it that Siddhanta Saraswati was received with all the honor of an Acharya. The Panditas of the Karma Jada Smartas were also present, as well as descendants from various caste Goswami families who supported them. By everyone's consent, Srila Vishwambharananda Dev Goswami accepted the chair of the meeting. Siddhanta Saraswati then presented his paper to the huge assembly. The paper was divided into two sections: the Prakriti Jana, Kanda, Prakriti Jana section, and the Hari Jana section. Prakriti Jana means people of material nature. Hari Jana means people of Hari. Initially, he began to recite the glories of the Brahmanas. The opposing Pandits were besides themselves with joy. They had no idea that there were so many verses glorifying Brahmanas, and they eagerly heard Siddhanta Saraswati speak. This is there in the book, you can read it. However, Siddhanta Saraswati then began to explain the Brahmana, the Vaishnava, the relationship between the two, the qualifications of a guru, etc. And then the opposition's joy quickly subsided. When no one could offer a strong argument in response, a huge uproar commenced. Some counter-arguments were given, but Siddhanta Saraswati immediately refuted their contentions with searing logic. The meeting went on in this way for 3 days. Backing up Siddhanta Saraswati were Sri Madhusudan Goswami Ji, Sarvabhauma Sri Yukta Ramananda Das Babaji, and Sri Yukta Sitanath Bhaktitirtha Mahadaya. They all offered strong arguments that no matter what family a Vaishnava appears in, he is perfectly qualified to worship the Shalagram Shila and recite the Vedas. On the final day, Siddhanta Saraswati was the concluding speaker. He spoke brilliantly with great vigor and incredible rhetoric for 2 hours. When he finished, no one on the opposing party could say a word. There was simply no way to counter him. So this is Acharya Bhaskar, the son like Acharya. There was a huge uproar in acclaim of the brilliant Acharya. Thousands of people rushed forward to take the dust of his lotus feet. The guards pleaded with the people to remain peaceful, and they would certainly have their desires fulfilled. Taking Siddhanta Saraswati to a separate place, the guards forcibly took his feet and dunked them into a basin of water. The Acharya objected strongly, as it was his principle not to allow anyone to touch his feet. And if anyone offered obeisances to him, he would immediately offer them obeisances in return. Yet the guards, desiring to protect him from the press of the crowd, took this action, adding a few buckets of water to the quantity and distributed it to the crowd. In this way, the people felt satisfied and blessed, and they exhausted the entire supply in no time. Siddhanta Saraswati was thus acclaimed as the greatest hero of the conference. The Gaura Mantra, later in 1911, another controversy surfaced, challenging that the name Gaura in the Gayatri Mantra chanted by Gaudiya Vaishnavas was not an eternal name of Godhead, was not found in the original Vedas, and that Lord Chaitanya was not an incarnation of Godhead, but rather, by his own admission, a devotee of God. Although it is clearly established in the pages of Chaitanya Bhagavata and Chaitanya Charitamrita that Lord Chaitanya is the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself, there were some persons who did not believe that his position as an avatar was revealed in the original Vedas. Of course, one actual proof of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's divinity was the darshans he provided to a number of exalted devotees during the Mahaprakash manifestations in the home of Srivas Thakur. It's a publicly the Lord revealed his identity. To Lord Nityananda as a six-armed Vishnu form, as Shadbhuja, to Sarvam Bhattacharya, Radha Krishna, to Srila Ramananda Raya, and so on. These proofs, along with many convincing verses supplied by Krishnadas Kaviraj and Vrindavan Thakur in their Chaitanya Charitamrita and Chaitanya Bhagavata, respectively, were sufficient for reasonable men. But the more stubborn worldly scholars and critics wanted proof from the original Vedas. The Smartas objected to the worship of the deity form of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and claimed that the Gaura Mantra was not an eternal Vedic mantra. Siddhanta Saraswati cited proof from the Shruti, particularly from the Chaitanya Upanishad, from the Atharva Veda. So this itself is very, very clear that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati used the Chaitanya Upanishad. Chaitanya Upanishad was discovered and published by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Sahovacha krasnam te vadishyami jaknavi tire navadvipe golokakhe dhamni govindo dvibhujo gaura sarvatma mahapurusha mahatma mahayogi trigunatita sattvarupo bhaktim loke kashyati iti tadete shloka bhavanti. Brahma said, I shall tell thee a secret. On the bank of the Jahnavi at Navadvip, which is called Golokadham, shall Govinda in a two-arm form as Gaura, the great one, the great mystic, who is transcendental the three modes of material nature and whose form is eternal, reveal bhakti to the world. There are a number of verses in that regard. Other evidence was cited from the Shvetashvatara Upanishad as well as Smriti, Tantras, Puranas, and especially the Srimad Bhagavatam. Siddhanta Saraswati addressed a large assembly at Navadvip's Bodo Akra Hall, where many erudite scholars had gathered, headed by Sri Madhusudan Goswami, Sarabhu, same Madhusudan Goswami. He forcefully and brilliantly proved the eternality and glory of the name, form, attributes, etc. of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Although Siddhanta Saraswati was unaware of it, Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji was there in one corner of the meeting, and when he heard Siddhanta Saraswati's lecture, he was extremely pleased with him. All of the Gaudiya Vaishnavas who heard the discourse were filled with bliss and began to chant Siddhanta Saraswati's glories again and again. Due in large measure Siddhanta Saraswati's strong preaching on this point throughout his life, the deity form of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is now worshipped and accepted all over India as the eternal form of the Lord, and many thousands have received the Gaura Mantra with great faith and for eternal benefit. His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, commented on Siddhanta Saraswati's strong preaching against the caste Goswamis and Sparta Brahmins. My Guru Maharaj's contribution is that he defeated the caste Goswamis. He defeated this Brahmanism. He did it the same way as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did. As Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Kibavibra Kivanyasi Shudra Kene Noy, Jai Krishna Tattvavedta Say Guru Hoy. There is no consideration whether one is a sannyasi, a Brahmana, a Shudra, or a Grihastha. No. Anyone who knows the science of Krishna is all right. He is Goswami and he is Brahmana. This was my Guru Maharaj's contribution. The idea is that particular acharyas in our Siddha Parampara have contributed to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission in particular ways. This was my Guru Maharaj's contribution. And for this reason, he had to face so many vehement protests from these Brahmanas of the caste Goswamis. Once they conspired to tell him, once they conspired to kill him, my Guru Maharaj told me personally, by his grace, When we used to meet alone, he used to talk about so many things. He was so kind that he used to talk with me, and he personally told me that these people, they wanted to kill me. They collected 25,000 rupees and went to bribe the police officer in charge of the area, saying, you take these 25,000 rupees. We shall do something against Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati and you don't take any steps. You could understand that they wanted to kill him. So the police officer frankly came to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. Of course, we accept bribes and we indulge in such things, but not for a sadhu, not for a saintly person. I cannot dare. So the police officer refused and said to my Guru Maharaj, you take care. This is the position. This was because he so vehemently protested. When my Guru Maharaj was present, even big scholars were afraid to talk with even his beginning students. My Guru Maharaj was called living encyclopedia. He could talk with anyone on any subject. He was so learned and no compromise. So-called saints, avatars, yogis, everyone who was false was an enemy to my Guru Maharaj. He never compromised. Some God brothers complained that this preaching was a chopping technique and it would not be successful. But those who criticized him fell down. And those who followed him have succeeded. If you come up to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's standards of vichar, study, and achar, practice, and you preach the way he has instructed that we are meant to preach, it will succeed, it will only succeed. Superficially, it may seem like you are creating a commotion. But factually, over the years, over the decades, you will see the effect will be permanent. And it will be all auspicious. In March of 1912, Siddhanta Saraswati was invited by Maharaj Manindra Chandra Nandi Bahadur to come to his Kashim Bazar palace to give some lectures about Krishna. Although Siddhanta Saraswati was there for 4 days, he was prevented from glorifying the Lord except on one short occasion by envious Prakrasa Sahajiyas who were afraid that if the king heard Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, they would lose their positions. Therefore, Siddhanta Saraswati refused to eat any of the foodstuffs sent for him by the king on a golden plate. He took only one tulasi leaf, as he considered that the atmosphere was contaminated by the materialistic envious behavior of the Sajiyas, and that he could not render service to the Maharaj by glorifying Krishna before him, and that if he could not render service to the Maharaj by glorifying Krishna before him, then he would not take his foodstuffs. Thus he remained fasting from the 21st to the 24th of March, on the 5th day. He got an opportunity to speak for about 5 minutes and was then shouted down. He decided to leave. The Maharaj had been wrongly informed by the Sajiyas that Siddhanta Saraswati had refused his food, accusing the king of being of the Tili caste, which was a low caste. Yet he sorrowfully met Siddhanta Saraswati at the railway station and asked him to explain why he had fasted and why he was leaving. Siddhanta Saraswati then told the king, I did not get an opportunity. I did not get any opportunity to glorify to you the message of the absolute truth according to Srimad Bhagavatam. So how shall I accept your things? Apart from that, the Lord does not accept the offered objects of a pujari who is blind to the knowledge of the absolute truth. For that reason, it is not prasad. Look at Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's standard. It's not that simply you just offer it and chant some mantras and you offer it and the food stuff is lacto-vegetarian and therefore Krishna will accept. It doesn't. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati did not consider that. Everything has to be proper. Only then will Krishna accept it. Only then is it Krishna prasad, and only then by surviving on the basis of that prasad, you will be able to make spiritual progress. He then left by train at 11 p.m. and arrived at Dubliya, getting down at 2:30 in the morning, and then walked 5 miles to Rajapattan, Mayapur, where he cooked and honored prasad. This incident serves as a brilliant example of the principled and staunch behavior of Vaishnava Acharya must exhibit. In November of 1912, Siddhanta Saraswati went on tour with some other devotees to see some of the places visited by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates like Sri Khanda, Yajigram, Atwa, Jhamatpur, Akaiha, Chapandi, die-hard, etc. By visiting those places, he preached pure devotional service unceasingly. Although Siddhartha Saraswati was constantly immersed in chanting the holy name, at first at the Yoga Peeth in Mayapur and then later at Vrajapattana. Vrajapattana is a place where Chaitanya Mat is in Mayapur. If I remember correctly, it's the Chaitanya Mat area that is referred to as Vrajapattana. The site of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Vrajalila dramas. He was always considering how to preach. After Rohini Kumar Ghosh had his amazing dream earlier on and taken initiation, two other boys approached Siddhanta Saraswati and were initiated in 1913 and were called Vaishnavdas and Paramananda Vidyaratna. On the 6th of February 1913, Siddhanta Saraswati rented a large house for 36 rupees a month at number 4 Sanagar Lane in the Kalighat section of Calcutta. There he established the Bhagavad printing press, the Sri Bhagavad Yantra, so that he could begin to print the important literatures of the Gaudiya Vaishnavas. He called the press the Brihad Mridanga. Brihad Mridanga means the large Mridanga. Explaining that an ordinary Kirtan party could be heard for only a few blocks, but this Mridanga could be heard far and wide. He wanted to print the second edition of the Chaitanya Charitamrita with the Amrita Pravaha Bhashya by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and his own Anubhashya, as well as the Srimad Bhagavatam and other books. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's commentary to Chaitanya Charitamrita is known as Anubhashya, and he wanted to print Chaitanya Charitamrita with Bhaktivinoda Thakur's commentary and his own commentary. Extremely nice edition. That was the basis for Prabhupada's Chaitanya Charitamrita edition also. The Bhagavad Gita with the Sarastham Varshini commentary of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, the Rasikaranjan commentary by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and the great poetry Srila Gauranga Krishnodaya by Govinda Das were also printed. Bhaktivinoda Thakur had printed a few different editions of Bhagavad Gita. There was an edition in which he had Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary, Sarartha Varshini, and accompanying it, Bhaktivinoda gave a Bengali paraphrase called Rasikaranjan, that which pleases the advanced devotees, that which pleases the connoisseurs. And then he published another edition of Bhagavad Gita. That edition had a commentary by Baladev Vidyabhushan, and it had Bhaktivinoda Thakur's paraphrase called Vidvat Ranja, that which pleases the scholars. That edition was the basis for Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita as it is. Gauranga Krishnodaya was a Mahakavya. It was in Sanskrit, and it summarizes Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes. The press was moved to Vrajapattana in 1914, and later in 1915 it was moved to Krishnanagar. The disappearance pastimes of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Srila Gauranga Das Babaji on June 22nd in 1914 at the Bhakti Bhavan in Calcutta. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur performed this pastime of disappearance. His samadhi was established at Sri Swananda Sukhdat Kunj on December 27, 1914. At this time, Siddhanta Saraswati took up the work of publishing the Sajjan Toshani. Sajjan Toshani was the great journal of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He had established in, I think, 1880s, and it was continued by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. And the other books which had been left unpublished by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. On November 17, 1915, Srila Gauranga Das Babaji Maharaj left the mortal world on Utthana Ekadashi. A terrible situation was created at this juncture by various heads of Mat who wanted to have the samadhi of Srila Gauranga Das Babaji as a means of fundraising for their own sense gratification. first-hand account of this incident was given in a biographical work about Siddhanta Saraswati called Saraswati Jayashri. After the departure of, this was in Bengali, and it's presented in an English translation here. After the departure of Babaji Maharaj, there were many types of opinions and disturbances over who would give a samadhi, who would put his body in samadhi. Hiralal Goswami and few other people sent Padmanabh Brahmachari alias Krishna Chaitanya Das to Sridham Mayapur to fetch Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada refers to Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada. They also told me to go with him. Crossing over the river by Pulia's ferry boat. Pulia is Navadip town. On this side of, we have Mayapur, and across Ganga is Navadip town, and across Jalangi is Swarupganj, Gotramadweep, and other areas. Crossing over the river by Pulia's ferry boat, I saw Prabhupada coming with bare feet and covered by a green chadar. With him was Sri Yukta Paramananda Brahmachari. It was then the period of Chaturmasya. Prabhupada's hair and beard were long. Seeing him, I prostrated in respect and told him in detail of the situation. After crossing the river by ferry boat, Prabhupada arrived at the Rani Dharmashala. Srila Babaji Maharaj used to stay there. Various heads of Navadip's Vaishnava gathering places had begun to argue amongst themselves, overtaking Srila Babaji Maharaj's spiritually blissful body. And they had begun to rise in order to give the samadhi, in order to take that body and inter it in samadhi. The reason being that in the future, the samadhi of such a perfect great person would be used as an instrument to raise monetary income. Srila Prabhupada resisted such illegitimate attempts of theirs. In apprehension of a breach of peace, Navadip's inspector of police was then present at that place. Detective Department's commissioner, Rai Bahadur Yatindra Singh Mahashwar, was then Navadip's inspector of police. After much controversy, the Babaji said, Saraswati Thakur is not a sannyasi. Therefore, he does not have the eligibility to give the samadhi, or a person who has renounced his home. The idea is this: Gaudisha Das Babaji had taken Babaji Vesh, he had taken Babaji initiation, and Siddhanta Saraswati was a brahmachari. So, how can a person who is not taken Babaji initiation take the body of one who has taken Babaji initiation and put it in samadhi? We are all Babaji. He's not a Babaji, so the body shall come to us. In reply to that, Prabhupada said in a loud voice like thunder, I am the only disciple of Paramahamsa Babaji Maharaj. Even though I have not accepted sannyas, I am a celibate brahmachari, and by the grace of Babaji Maharaj, I am not secretly addicted to abominable habits or involved in fornication in sex, as some monkey-like people are. If there is someone amongst the people present who is a renunciate of truly stainless character, then he can give Babaji Maharaj samadhi. Then he can take the body and he can put that body in samadhi. We have no objection to that. So first he said that. They were silent. Then he continued. He who within the last 1 year, or the last 6 months, 3 months, 1 month, or at least within the last 3 days has not had any illicit contact with a woman will be able to touch this spiritually blissful body. If anyone else touches it, he will be completely ruined. Hearing these words, the inspector of police said, how will evidence be had for this? Prabhupada said, I will have faith in their word. We became amazed at seeing them all. After Prabhupada's words, the people present wearing the attire of Babajis, one by one turned their backs. The inspector of police was speechless. So that was the situation. The so-called renunciates who had illicit sexual relationships. Then according to Srila Prabhupada's instructions, we had the good fortune to carry the spiritually blissful body of Paramahamsa Babaji Maharaj, referring to Gauranga Das Babaji Maharaj, which was lying on the ground. Some people gave advice to us. When Babaji Maharaj was manifest, he said that his body should be dragged through the streets of Sridham Navadip so that it may be bathed in the dust of this holy land. It is befitting to observe the command of Babaji Maharaj. Prabhupada then said, although we are fools, inexperienced and offenders, we will still not be disinclined to understand the true meaning of those humility-filled words which were spoken by my Gurudev in order to destroy the pride of worldly-minded people. For even Krishna Chandra personally thinks himself to be successful if he carries my Sri Gurudev on his head or shoulders. After the departure of Thakur Haridas, Sri Gaur Sundar took the spiritually blissful body of the Thakur, Haridas Thakur, on his lap and danced. What dignity he adorned it with. Therefore, following the footsteps of Sriman Mahaprabhu, we shall also bear Babaji Maharaj's spiritually blissful body on our heads. Srila Gauranga Das Babaji Maharaj was placed in Samadhi on the 17th of November 1915. 16 years later, due to flooding, it had to be moved. And there was a great clamor over who would claim the Samadhi and give it a new location. Saraswati Thakur commented that those who were most sincere would be successful in locating the Samadhi. And his disciples were able to do so, moving the whole Samadhi intact in a boat accompanied by Sankirtan from Navadip to Mayapur, where a beautiful Samadhi was built at Rajapattana near the Radha Kund. In 1914, Kunja Bihari Vidyabhushan, who later took sannyas and was named Bhakti Vilas Tirtha Maharaj, had come to Mayapur and heard from Srila Gauranga Das Babaji Maharaj on the verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita. Krishna Bhakta Nishkam Atev Shanta. The Babaji then instructed him to hear from his Guru, Siddhanta Saraswati. He then heard from Siddhanta Saraswati on the verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita. Brahmanda Brahmite Guna Bhagyavan Jeev Guru Krishna Prasade Pai Bhakti Lata Bij. Krishna Bhakta Nishkam Atev Shanta. Bhukti Mukti Siddhi Kami Sakali Ashanta. The famous verses from Chaitanya Charitamrita. A devotee of Krishna has no hankering, no motive, and therefore he is peaceful. Whereas those who hanker for, those who pursue enjoyment, liberation, or the perfection of various mystic opulences, they are actually peaceless. The fortunate living entity, due to some good fortune, when a living entity is wandering within the universe, he comes across the seed of pure bhakti by the mercy of Guru and Krishna. That is the meaning of this Brahmanda Brahmiti verse, and was so much impressed that he gave up all aversion he had formerly maintained against Vaishnavas and became determined to hear Siddhanta Saraswati seriously. He was afflicted with many of the common misconceptions of the day about the nature of sadhus and was on occasion upset by Siddhanta Saraswati's strong language about such persons, but finally was fully convinced. He came again, having secured 2 months' leave from his job at the Calcutta post office, and arrived on the day that Om Vishnupad, Paramahamsa Srila Gauranga Das Babaji, entered the eternal pastimes of the Lord in Koladri on Utthana Ekadashi, November 19, 1915. After some days of hearing, Kunja Bihari asked for initiation and was then inspired to propose to Saraswati Thakur that he make arrangements for him to stay in Calcutta and give discourses so that thousands of people could be benefited. While engaged in his bhajan here refers to his personal activity of chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra at Vrajapattana, Saraswati Thakur had often considered how he would execute the preaching work that was desired of him by both of his spiritual guides, Srila Gauranga Das Babaji and Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. It was especially weighing heavily upon him after their departure. He was feeling their separation keenly, living the words of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that aside from separation from a devotee of Krishna, there is no other suffering. Humbly considered at that time. How shall I preach to the world the pure message of Sri Chaitanya and establish the heart's desire of my gurus? Remember, preaching is not simply communicating the information that we have received about Krishna consciousness. It is not. Preaching means to make others understand by themselves, to take up Krishna consciousness and progress unidirectionally from Shraddha to Prema. That is the meaning of preaching. On one hand, we need to move from Shraddha to Prema unidirectionally. That means move up without moving down. This one thing. That is Swaupakara. But Paraupakara, or helping others, refers to helping others move. Of course, they need to be interested. That's understood. That's understood. But at least giving them the opportunity. So preaching is not simply just communicating to them the truths of Krishna consciousness. That if you do like that, then people will come and they will also go. They may emotionally, they may like you, and therefore they may come. And after you die, they will go. What is the use of that? That is not preaching. Preaching means they permanently take to the process of Krishna consciousness in full purity, or at least with a strong desire to become fully pure. I have no support of people, no support of wealth, and I do not have any learning or intelligence which can attract the common people. We took rest at night, and at that time we saw in a visionary trance the Panchatattva and their Sankirtan associates entering from the east into the Natya Mandir of the temple of the Sri Yogapeeth, the site of Lord Chaitanya's appearance, their effulgence lighting up the whole scene. With them were Vaishnava Sarvabhauma, Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Srila Gauranga Das Babaji Maharaj, and other previous acharyas. They gave him many assurances and told him, don't you worry at all. With supreme enthusiasm, preach the conclusion of pure devotion in intense earnestness. Chant the glories of the name, abode, form, attributes, associates, and pastimes of God at various places. All of us will help you. There is no need to worry. The support of unlimited people, countless wealth, and boundless learning await the blessing of being engaged in the service of your preaching. They will be received when they are necessary. So, when we present the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with all purity, while carrying out the instructions of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in all purity, then the previous acharyas will make an arrangement for that preaching to be received when the necessity arises. No type of worldly hindrance or danger will be able to make any obstruction for this great work of yours. We are always with you. Sannyas, with this spectacular vision in mind as his impetus, and at the urging of his disciples, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur thought the time had come for widespread preaching. Up until 1918, Siddhanta Saraswati was mainly immersed in chanting and publishing books. In Vrajapatana, Mayapur, on the full moon day of Phalgun Purnima, Gaur Purnima, the 29th of March 1918, Siddhanta Saraswati took sannyas and took the name Sri Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj at the age of 44, according to the Vedic rites, which he had gathered from the Ramanuja followers in his travels. Now, why the Ramanuja group? Why according to this system followed by the Ramanuja group? Because the Ramanuja line, they were still following the culture of Tridandi Sannyas. And in Srimad Bhagavatam, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's favorite commentator, Sridhar Swami, he had also spoken in approval of Tridandi Sannyas. There are different types of sannyas. And the type of sannyas that was favorable to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's favorite commentator, Sridhar Swami, was Tridandi Sannyas. And Tridandi Sannyas was still being practiced in the Ramanuja line according to a particular procedure that they had preserved. So therefore, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he followed that system. He took initiation from a picture of Srila Gauranga Das Babaji Maharaj. Taking sannyas from a picture was certainly not a standard practice of the Ramanujas. However, Ramanujacharya himself took sannyas in the presence of one of the deities in one of the temples. because the situation was such that he had to take, and there is some scriptural allowance for this under certain dire situations, dire circumstances. The situation, however, was unique. Saraswati Thakur had no spiritual master who was physically present, and he had no godbrothers, being the only disciple of Gauranga Das Babaji. He was furthermore a self-realized soul, and there's no doubt that he took sannyas to fulfill the innermost desires of his spiritual masters, who had both ordered him to preach. This practice was never meant to be imitated by others in much less unique and less qualified positions. He wanted to establish a mission that would take the teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu all over the world. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was beginning his preaching effort towards the end of the First World War, in which many Indian nationalists had taken part on the side of the British, thinking that this might encourage the British to consider their desires for independence. This was not to be. In 1919, the British passed a Rowlatt Act to repress the move for Indian freedom. And 1 week later in Amritsar, in the square called Jallianwala Bagh, British soldiers shot and killed hundreds of unarmed, peaceful Indian protesters. They were not even protesting. They had just come for something. Gandhi's non-cooperation movement gained momentum. Nationalistic fervor was at its height. It was in the atmosphere of British rule and nationalistic foment at a time of revolution that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur began his preaching. Most astonishing. Whole of India was in a fever to somehow get independence, political independence from the British government. And in the middle of this, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he comes and he is going to say, this is all a waste of time, it is all Maya. Whether you're under Indian government or under British government, it means nothing, and it is actually a waste of time. All of you should simply give up every activity and simply engage in pure devotional service unto Lord Krishna. Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam Padasevanam Archana Vandanam Nasim Sakyamatmanam Sarvadharman Parityajya Mamegam Sharanam Ham Tvam Sarvapapebhyo Mokshayishyami Macha. This is Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's message. At what time? At that time. That time. With that audience, obsessed with getting independence. That particular period from 1920 onwards, India increasingly became obsessed with all of this. Still, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati broke through that shell and he created a spiritual revolution in the midst of that. But as Srila Prabhupada learned in his meeting with the great saintly person in 1922, it was not a nationalistic revolution that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was interested in igniting, but rather the spiritual lives of humanity at large, as described in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Tad Vag Visargo Janataka Viplavo Yasmin Pratishlokam Abadha Bhatyapi Amanyanantasya Yashonkitani Yat Srinvanti Gayanti Kridanti Sadhava. On the other hand, that literature, which is full of descriptions of the transcendental glories of the name, fame, forms, pastimes, etc., of the unlimited Supreme Lord, is a different creation, full of transcendental words directed toward bringing about a revolution in the impious lives of this world's misdirected civilization. Such transcendental literatures, even though imperfectly composed, are heard, sung, and accepted by purified men who are thoroughly honest. He wanted to effect the upliftment of mankind throughout the world to the eternal spiritual platform of Krishna consciousness, where all strife, sectarianism, social discord, etc., were resolved forever. The means were the teachings of the liberated sages in the form of transcendental books, the writings of the liberated acharyas of the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. He aimed to propagate the great signs of self-realization far and wide. This is called Acharya Bhaskara, the sun-like Acharya. Traditionally, the followers of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, beginning with the Goswamis of Vrindavan, had accepted the Babaji dress at the time of accepting the renounced order of life. This is actually we know that there are 4 ashramas: Brahmacharya, Garhastya, Vanaprastha, Sannyas. And in each of these, there are 4 stages. This is the 4th stage of the 4th ashrama, 4.4. But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, as we see, he introduced the other type of sannyas, Parivrajaka sannyas. 4.3, the 3rd stage of the fourth ashrama. According to the tradition, one does not accept the Brahmin's thread or gives it up if he has accepted one, and does not carry a danda. One wears only a short white wrapper and a top piece. The idea is that when one has reached the liberated platform, he rids himself of any item of dress or symbol of Varnashrama Dharma, activities within the modes of nature, of which the sacred thread and sannyas ashrama are perceived as part, and makes his only business the chanting of the holy name in the mood of a bhajanandi. Not necessarily, they may also preach. They may also preach. They may also preach. Baladev Vidya Prabhu, he was Babaji, but he was writing books. Writing and preaching. Vishnu Chakravarti also. The 6 Goswamis, they were all preaching. But it had become a habit. And this is particularly talking about traditionally what was going on in the Gaudiya Vaishnava line. So they would function as Bhajanandis. This is considered the final transcendental stage of a Paramahamsa Vaishnava. This had been the convention since the time of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So this was the public convention amongst the Gaudiya Vaishnava community. Some persons also thought that to maintain the sacred thread and to accept Tridanda Sannyas were practices opposed to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teaching on the principle of humility. Trinadapi Sunichena. However, this is a fallacious view. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur has explained it in the following light. If the sacred thread is not taken at the time of initiation, this constitutes contempt for the process of initiation. The thread is not to signify Brahmanical pride that I am meant to be served by everyone, but rather it is a sign that one has been purified by the lotus feet of a guru. The thread is meant to indicate eternal service to the Lord, not egoism. And as far as accepting sannyas is concerned, that is for increasing one's serving mood, to serve the Lord with one's mind, body, and words. Sannyas simply refers to sannyas as it is intended in the Vedic scriptures. It is the best facility one can have to serve the lotus feet of Lord Krishna with one's body, mind, and words. Because one gives up not only sinful activities, he gives up all pious activities also. One gives up all family responsibilities, everything. He's simply interested in satisfying Krishna. So for such a person, this facility is of great help. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught this when he took sannyas by chanting the words of the Avanti Brahmana who took Tridanda sannyas, and which is described in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Etam sa asthaya paratmanishtham adhyasitam purvat tamayar maharshiti aham tarishyami durantaparam tamo mukundakri nisheva yaiva. I shall cross over the insurmountable ocean of nescience by being firmly fixed in the service of the lotus feet of Krishna. This was approved by the previous acharyas who were fixed in firm devotion to the Lord, Paramatma, the Supreme Personality of God. A few years back, I had conducted a seminar in Mayapur Institute with the running translation in Bengali, in which I had taken up various objections to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's specific teachings, and one of that was acceptance of sannyas. I had taken up the recent objections and dealt with that. It is there on Mayapur Institute's YouTube channel. You can get it. The translation was by Padmamukhani Mayapur into Bengali. I was speaking in English. The characteristics of a Goswami are described by Srila Rupa Goswami in the first verse of Sri Upadeshamrita. Vacho vegam manasah krodha vegam jihva vegam udaro pastha vegam etan vegan yogi shaheta dhira sarvam api mam prithivim sasishya. A sober person who can tolerate the urge to speak, the mind's demands, the actions of anger, and the urges of the tongue, belly, and genitals is qualified to make disciples all over the world. This is sannyas. Of course, you can say this is actually meant for everyone, but certainly a sannyasi is meant to have this. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj wanted to show an example to persons of the world from within the parameters of the Varnashrama system. Daivi Varnashrama, or the practice of executing the principles of Varnashrama Dharma by those who simultaneously practice and preach them. The practice of sadhana bhakti was also much extolled by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his writings, and was especially discussed by him in his Chaitanya Shikshamrita. The idea is this: until one develops unbreakable faith that all I need to engage in is Krishna Bhakti. Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Sparanam Padasevanam Archanam Vandanam Dasyam Sakyam Atma Nivedanam. One must execute that Krishna Bhakti along with his material dharma. For men and women, the activities of, there are 30 common principles. But apart from that, for men, there are the duties by the Varna and there are duties by the Ashrama. And for women, there is Stri Dharma. Until they come to the point where they have attained both external renunciation and internal detachment, or they have attained unbreakable faith in exclusive engagement in the 9 types of devotional service. That means all I need to do is devotional service to Krishna. That's all. Now, by speaking, it may seem very simple and easy. Carefully think about it. You'll understand how complicated it is, how difficult it is. Dhruva Maharaj wants to become rich. His mother tells him to go to the forest and worship Lord Narayan, and Lord Narayan will give him the opulence that he is seeking. Dhruva Maharaj does not think, let me go set up a company. No, when our devotees, when we want to make money, what all things we do? We join some company, we do this, we do that. Do we go out to Mayapur and sit in front of Radha Madhav and chant 24 hours a day, waiting for Radha Madhav to come and give money? And this exclusive engagement in Bhakti. Dhruva Maharaj had that faith and he engaged in it also. Of course, that is even materialistic engagement in Kevala Bhakti. Kama sarva kama va moksha kama udaradhi tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. It is called Tivra Bhakti. Exclusive engagement in Bhakti. It is quite fierce in its application. And it can be executed by those who have material desires, like Dhruva. Or it can be executed by those who want liberation from material existence. These are the sarva kama and the moksha kama. Or it can be executed by those who seek love of Godhead, akama. So, for the vast majority of those who have accepted Krishna and Krishna consciousness as a part of their daily life, they need to execute Daiva Varnashram. They need to execute Bhakti Anukula Karma. They need to accept the duties of the Karma system, which are favorable for devotional service, and which is what we find in Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam, 7th canto, chapters 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. You will find a description of the Varnashram system. That is Daiva Varnashram. That is Varnashram as it is. That is Bhakti Anukula Karma. That can be accepted as a support. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur very much stressed this. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur started implementing these rules as and when required. Therefore, to set a personal example of how the preacher who comes to the Madhyamadikari platform for his preaching work also follows the principles of Varnashram for the sake of showing an example to his followers, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj took sannyas. He also wanted to show by his action that he was actually taking a humble position below his 2 gurus, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Srila Gauranga Das Babaji, who had both accepted the Paramahamsa Vesh, the dress of a Paramahamsa Vaishnava. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, yes, if you are a pure Vaishnava, you do not require to engage in the activities of the Varnashram system. But he said, but we are not pure Vaishnavas. Bhaktivinoda Thakur was, Gauranga Das Babaji was, the predecessor Acharyas were, but we are not that. He took that position. And he said, we are not that. Therefore, we have to function within our position. We cannot imitate the activities and attitudes of those who are factually superior to us. Of course, his disciples, they understood that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati is just doing a role playing for us. And they also took sannyas and so on. But he explained that only after you become full-fledged Vaishnava, in which you do nothing but devotional service, then you can accept that 4.4, 4th ashrama, 4th status. which is quite stringent actually. Actually, all the rules of sannyas come there. You cannot see women, you cannot, all these rules are there. We find in Chaitanya Charitamrita how renunciates are meant to be. At that time, many sense gratifiers and bogus sahajiyas were wearing Babaji dress. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur wanted to exhibit by personal example just how exalted such personalities should be if they want to wear the same dress as Srila Rupa Goswami, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Srila Gauranga Das Babaji Maharaj, and other exalted eternal associates of the Lord. So with a view to exhibit the activities of a Pushtyanandi, a preacher, he accepted the dress of a sannyasi. For his preaching work, Srila Saraswati Thakur wisely chose to accept sannyas as people in India naturally show respect to sannyasis. And this was Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's motive as well, to save and attract persons who would have otherwise criticized him or not taken him seriously. There was also further precedent in her line for this action as Prabodhananda Saraswati, the author of Sri Chaitanya Chandramrita, Sri Navadipa Shatakam, Sri Vrindavana Shatakam, Sri Radha Rasa Sudhanidhi, and many other Vaishnava works, also accepted Tridanda Sannyas. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada also explains in his commentary on the Srimad Bhagavatam verse about the Avanti Sannyasi in Chaitanya Charitamrita that the most intimate devotee of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, namely Gadadhar Pandit, accepted the Tridanda Sannyas and also accepted Madhava Upadhyaya as his Tridandi Sannyasi disciple. It is said that from this Madhava Acharya, the Sampradaya known in Western India as the Vallabhacharya Sampradaya has begun. Srila Gopal Bhatta Bose, who is known as Smriti Acharya in the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, later accepted the Tridanda Sannyas order from Tridandipad Prabodhananda Saraswati. Thus, with solid historical precedent and a mood to preach widely, Srila Saraswati Thakur, on the same day as he accepted sannyas, established a temple at Vrajapattanam called the Chaitanya Matha and installed the deities Shri Guru Gauranga Gandharvika Giridhari. These deities, they shine in Chaitanya Matha also even now. In Yogapith, we see deities of Panchatattva, we see deities of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Gaurasundar as the husband of Lakshmi Priya and Vishnu Priya Devi. We also see deities of Shachi Mata and Jagannath Mishra. We also see deities of Nrsimhadev. But in Chaitanya Math, he established this other temple with Gandharvika Giridhari. He began to preach in the immediate locality, in Krishnagar, Daulatpur, etc. In June, he left Calcutta with a group of 23 devotees for Jagannath Puri, and he visited Sauri, Kumar, etc. on the way and saw Gopinath at Remuna, at Balasore. He lectured on the Shikshashtaka, and he also gave discourses in Katak and Puri. This is all in Orissa. As people learn in the larger biography, Bhaktisiddhanta Vaibhava, this kind of preaching had previously taken place at the time of Narottam Das Thakur. Widespread preaching. We're talking of like kind of mega preaching. While in the forested area in Alalnath near Jagannath Puri, Srila Saraswati Thakur entered a state of deep ecstasy and trance. Having realized the non-difference of this forest and the forest of Vrindavan, and lost his external awareness of the world. When he came back to his external consciousness alone in the woods, he could not determine where he was. Meanwhile, his followers, who had originally assumed that he had gone to the forest to answer the call of nature, became very worried about him and began to search for him everywhere. Finally, they found him and led him out. As he traveled to the various sites of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes, Srila Saraswati Thakur was overwhelmed on several occasions with symptoms of ecstasy and would always cite and chant the appropriate verses from Chaitanya Charitamrita to commemorate the mood and activities of the Lord in those sites. During this tour, when Srila Saraswati Thakur and his followers were returning from a darshan of Sakshi Gopal, he noticed that his household followers refused to give alms to some poor people who were requesting help. He then sarcastically described their attitude as money should not be given to poor, distressed people. If it is given, it will be karma kanda. Actually, householders need to carry out these duties. Householders have to be like this. They have to be charitable. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he was a householder, he dealt with the material needs of people also. Of course, always in Krishna consciousness, but he was not indifferent to the material needs of those people who, according to the Dharma Shastras, you are supposed to be compassionate upon. Saraswati Thakur was satirizing the attitude of his disciples who were thinking that it was beneath them as transcendental Vaishnavas to give charity to the poor, as though this were a continuing activity within the realm of karmic activity. He stated that this type of consideration by householders expresses miserliness, mercilessness, and a lack of affliction at others' distress. From this attitude, the heart becomes hard and attacked with niggardliness, filled. And as a result, the tendency to spend money even for Vishnu's service, which is the means of one's own interest, disappears. Therefore, offense in service, seva aparadha, is invited. In order to guard against all these hypocritical, sinful deliberations, Sri Gaurasundar in his pastimes as a householder used to give help to lowly, distressed people. Even earned wealth is obtained by the mercy of God. It is not the incorrect use of wealth if some portion of mercy is given to requesting poor people. It is its proper use. To distribute mercy, prasad, is a compulsory duty of householder Vaishnavas. Even though their poor people's miserableness has been obtained through the fault of their own karma, they are still God's people. Therefore, to give them help is a compulsory duty of well-to-do people. However, to think of them as Narayana is only blindness to truth and a terrible spiritual offense. So we don't go to one extreme and think that simply dealing with all these poor people, serving them, Daridra Seva, to consider that to be service to the Supreme Lord. That is foolishness. And on the other hand, householders who are duty bound to actually do these activities, they are meant to deal with this. It's supposed to be charitable then. They are supposed to help their neighbors. They are supposed to do all these things. That's what a grahastha means. A grahastha is not meant to be an idiot, simply trying to selfishly maintain he and his own dependence. He's supposed to take care of everyone. In Krishna consciousness, only difference, in addition, he must always try to mix his own swapakara, whatever activity he's trying to do for his own benefit, should mix it with Krishna consciousness. In addition to that, when he's helping others, both materially, when he's helping others materially, he should also mix it with Krishna consciousness. These things are important. Otherwise, you become hard-hearted and you don't carry out your particular duty. And there's no question of making spiritual progress because of that principle. Until you come to the point of full-fledged renunciation and detachment, or until you come to the point of unbreakable, absolute faith in Kevala Bhakti, exclusive engagement in Bhakti, which means you come to the point where you have reached a point of maturity. All I need to do is devotional service, even for material purposes. I don't need to do anything else, which is a kind of 1 in a million amongst those who take an initiation. Maybe 1 in a million gets this kind of idea. Because unless you are directly blessed by Krishna, how do you get an idea like that? You will be terrified. You will either become irresponsible and engage in sinful activities, or you will jump into material responsible activities. So therefore, that's a step-by-step procedure, how you progress. So at the status of Garhastya, household life, one is expected to do these things. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he impressed upon his followers that they need to do this. Spiritual organization, the Vishwa Vaishnava Raja Sabha and the Gaudiya Math. Now, a number of these details will be further clarified in Bhaktisiddhanta Vaibhava, which is one reason why I'm just glossing over them. I'm just passing over. In November of 1918, Kunjabihari Vidyabhushan rented a house for 50 rupees near the temple of Pareshnath at number 1 Ultaranga Junction Road, and Srila Saraswati Thakur established Shri Bhakti Vinod Asan there. The seat of Bhakti Vinod, that is the meaning of that place. Now it has come Apparently, it has come to ISKCON, which is very, very nice. Although there was no arrangement for rent, some of the householder disciples or Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur took up the responsibility for maintaining the preaching effort. Kunja Vihari Vidyabhushan worked to support the preaching by getting government service. Here we see some obvious parallels to the way Srila Prabhupada started out. The vision of the forms of Krishna on the Jaladut, the small storefront beginnings, the disciples getting a place without knowing how the rent was to be paid, but with great faith in the Paramahamsa, carrying on by getting some ordinary jobs, etc. This was the beginning of fulfillment, promised in both the visionary experiences. The only thing required was a sincere effort to satisfy Krishna, and that was certainly there in abundance. This example in the lives of Srila Saraswati Thakur and Srila Prabhupada underscores the power of Sharanagati, total surrender to the mercy of Krishna. The secret to success is clearly contained in Krishna's often quoted but not easily followed instruction to Arjuna. Sarva dharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja. There is no material formula, just sincere endeavor to please Krishna. Krishna had assured Arjuna, do not fear. The same assurance had been given to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur at the Yoga Beat and to Srila Prabhupada on the Jaladut. If one undertakes the most auspicious work of trying to deliver the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to the lost souls of this age, while also obeying all relevant instructions of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his own life, he will never fail. And he'll become a recipient of the merciful glance of the Lord. This should be learned from the living examples of the Acharyas. In December of 1918, Srila Saraswati Thakur set out with 10 devotees on a preaching tour. His first stop was in Yashohar, and an engagement was held in the house of a famous lawyer named Rai Bahadur, and discourses were held in his house, which culminated in a Vaishnava conference chaired by Srila Saraswati Thakur. During the conference, he gave an ecstatic lecture about Srila Haridas Thakur, who had been born in a Muslim family at Budhan, Pargana, in the Jashore district. Now Jashore is in Bangladesh. At the end of the lecture, he concluded, Jai bhoje sei bodo abhaktahin char, Krishna bhajane nahi jati kulari vichar. He who worships is great. He who worships Krishna is great. Non-devotees are of no consequence. They are insignificant. There is no consideration of caste, family, etc. in the worship of Krishna. End of quotation mark. This was followed by powerful Sankirtan in the city of Jashore. From there, the preachers proceeded to the Khulna district, and in the house of Nepal Chandra Mahasaya, they held a big meeting, and devotees from all the neighboring villages attended. At this time, there were some arguments offered about Vedic Varnashrama Dharma and devotional behavior. By explaining verses from the Srimad Bhagavatam and the Sattvata Smriti as proof, Srila Saraswati Thakur defeated those arguments, explaining the glories of Devi Varnashrama when determined by one's personal qualities and one's devotional activities. When Varnashrama Dharma is distorted by persons of a Rakshasic attitude or an Asuric attitude, then it is called Asura Varnashrama. And it appears that one prominent feature of Asuric Varnashrama is determining the Varnas on the basis of birth. But in Daiva Varnashrama, which is actually the standard, the original Varnashrama is Daiva Varnashrama. Varnashrama as it is, that is Daiva Varnashrama, as presented in Srimad Bhagavatam. There the Varnas are not presented by according to birth. Birth is very favorable, we accept that. Certainly we accept that. Even amongst non-devotees, they know that one's childhood experience is a very powerful influence throughout one's life. Accepted. But nevertheless, if one has the gunakarma of some other varna, he has to be identified as such. Even though there were persons in that village who were very offensive in their attitude and behavior, Srila Saraswati Thakur personally went door to door with his followers in the mood of Lord Nityananda in his dealing with Jagai and Mathai, being very compassionate towards their unfortunate state. From there, they proceeded to Bongram, where Srila Saraswati Thakur met with an old student of his from the time he was teaching astrology at the Saraswata Chatushpati in Calcutta. At that time, his old student sat down next to him, as was their previous custom, and one of the disciples of Srila Saraswati Thakur gave his chadar so that his spiritual master would get some special seat of honor. The old student, who was by then a prominent lawyer, became offended and objected to this. The point was that as a former disciple of Srila Saraswati Thakur, it was not proper for him to assume an equal position, especially since Srila Saraswati Thakur had now become a Tridanti sannyasi. Srila Saraswati Thakur did not object, but it was pointed out by his followers that this was an exhibition of humility on his part. When Krishna's Kaviraj says, Jagai Madhai hoite moise papishtha, Purisher heat hoite moise lakhishta. I am more sinful than Jagai and Madhai. I am lower than a worm in stool. It is not that one is to take him at his word. One in the position of a guru and sannyasi is always to be so honored by his disciples. It's 6:30, so let me stop at that and I'll make a note that this is the paragraph beginning on the 1st of January. I will begin the next session. Okay, any questions? If you have any questions, you can raise your hand. Very interesting. Okay, no questions. Okay, if you have any questions in you can also bring them up in the Telegram group. Okay, Chaitanya Hari Prabhu. From where the references was quoted, my connection was disrupted just now regarding the exalted position of Srila Gauranga Swami. I was quoting from Srimad Bhagavatam 11th canto. 11th canto. Here, this is chapter 2 of the 11th canto, about the symptoms of an Uttama Vaishnava. As you said, only 1 in a million has unbreakable faith or pure Shraddha. Without pure Shraddha, we cannot progress to pure Prema. So only 1 in a million is going back to Goloka. Ask me no questions and I tell you no lies. Even to attain Bhava Bhakti is rare. But it's not, this is all for going to Goloka Vrindavan, to go to Vaikuntha. One should have no desire for any material happiness. And one should have a desire to satisfy the Supreme Lord. How to develop that pure Shraddha? What can we do to be blessed by Krishna that way? For that, we have to obey Srila Rupa Goswami's injunctions very carefully and very strictly, without trying to play the fool and without intoxicating ourselves by associating with those who think it's also easy. And so, there are a number of people who can easily convince you to feel good about yourself. We require to have the maturity to understand reality. If I am a 3rd standard student, why I need to feel good only when I am falsely told I am in 10th standard? Reality is reality. But we don't need to be unnecessarily depressed also. Because if we Krishna consciousness is simple for the simple, it's only complicated for the complicated people. The process is very simple. Atashri Krishna Namadi na bhavet grahyam indriya. You cannot grasp Krishna's name, form, quality, pastimes, abode, and his associates. Sevo mukhehi jihvado swayameva spuratya. When we develop an attitude of uninterrupted, unmotivated service to his lotus feet, and that we gather by submissively carrying out Krishna's instructions under the guidance of devotees more advanced than ourselves, and primarily by taking shelter of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Then it comes. Everything comes. Everything comes. The process of chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra without offenses is actually quite, from the spiritual perspective, quite miraculous. Quite miraculous. How Krishna can enter into our not just body, mind, intelligence, even our ego, and completely purify all of this. It's quite astonishing. It is one thing to externally take up certain practices, which you can do it if you have some previous punya. There is another thing when your tastes have changed. When your tastes have changed, that is a gigantic achievement. And a lot of non-devotees, they are astonished. You see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's followers exhibit a change of taste, permanent change of taste. Permanent change of taste. We have come across people who have been chain smokers and all. You cannot tolerate smoking at all. People who have liked meat and all these kind of abominable foodstuffs, after they surrender to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and there are many instances they cannot tolerate any unofferable foodstuffs. Without faking it. It's just natural. So naturally, when your taste changes, these are all proof that we have been already blessed by Krishna's devotees and by Krishna. So like this, everything will happen. Also, the text mentions preaching as a means to get mercy. But as we learn, preaching means pure preaching, inducing others to take to unidirectional progress, but we are not at that level. No. I may be on the platform of Sattva, Sadhu Sangha, whatever. It is my duty to help bring others to my level. That is called preaching, Parampārā. And even to accomplish that much, we need to do it in the proper manner. And we need to make progress. So at the very least, we need to progress so that others can come to the same status that we are at. You cannot give what you don't have. You cannot give Prema Bhakti when you have not achieved Prema Bhakti. You can only share what you have. And it is Lord Chaitanya's instruction that we need to help everyone come to that point of Prema Bhakti. So even from that perspective, we need to make spiritual progress. We are simply repeating philosophy by the order of Guru and trying to make others chant. So where do we stand and how can we progress? This repeating the unadulterated teachings of Krishna consciousness is coming down through the spiritual masters and the Vaishnavas. That is a necessary condition, but that is not sufficient. First of all, we have to always keep checking whether whatever we are hearing is in line with Prabhupada's presentation, because Prabhupada has accurately put it all together in his books. And when I say Prabhupada, I'm generally talking about Prabhupada's books. Prabhupada's books clarify Prabhupada the person and help you very clearly understand the teachings of the predecessor acharyas. You need a yardstick with which to understand what is right, what is wrong. Right is right no matter who does it. Wrong is wrong no matter who does it. You need to first of all understand what is right, what is wrong. And everything, first of all, you have to understand that what is the circle within which you need to be in. And then we talk about service to the spiritual masters, service to other Vaishnavas and so on. Everything has to happen within the boundary of the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, which is immaculately presented by Srila Prabhupada. That we should always remember. Never ever start thinking that, oh, my Guru, or this great devotee, or that Shiksha Guru, or my Vatma Pradasha Guru. Nothing like that. It is our duty to always ensure that we are engaging in that type of devotional service by which Krishna is satisfied. And how do we know that Krishna is satisfied? We know when we attain Anartha Nivritti, when the 6 urges tone down, when the 6 items which are unfavorable for devotional service, noted in Nectar of Instruction text 2, when they reduce in our life, when the activities which are favorable for Krishna consciousness, noted in text 3 of Nectar of Instruction, when they spontaneously increase in your life, that means when you become attracted to those activities, then you know that you are making Krishna happy. So this is how we know whether you are progressing or regressing. This is how we understand whether we are doing it in the right manner or not. Not that simply, this great devotee said, that pure devotee said, my Guru Maharaj said, this one said, that one said, it's not like that. It is ultimately our individual responsibility to progress in Krishna consciousness. One may have all bona fide help. He may directly be a disciple of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself. He may be a direct disciple of Lord Krishna himself. And still he can screw it up upside down fully. So we need to do it in such a manner that we progress in Krishna consciousness. The Gaudiya Vaishnava goal is not just to attain Krishna. Gaudiya Vaishnava goal is to come to the point of Krishna Prema, Prema Bhakti. Why Prema Bhakti? Because when you are in the status of Prema Bhakti and you want to serve Krishna, then it is very pleasing to Krishna. That is what Krishna wants from us. Anyway, we are all Jiva Swarupa Krishna Nityadas. All of us are anyway Krishna's servants. But we are forcibly made to serve Krishna right now. So we cannot say that, oh, anyway, I'm serving Krishna, why Krishna is not happy with me? No, Krishna wants me to serve him with the exclusive desire to please him. That is called Prema Bhakti. Right now, we are executing sadhana bhakti on a daily basis. Right now, we have accepted Krishna in our life, in our daily life. This is Gunibhuta Bhakti, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's language. Minimized bhakti, actually. Then the next phase is when you make Krishna the center of your life. That is Pradhanibhuta Bhakti, maximized bhakti, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's language. Then we need to come to the point where Krishna alone is my life, I have no other life. Kevala Bhakti. Where you do nothing other than devotional service to Krishna. That's all. For any purpose, whatever. Only doing it. That's all. That and only that. Full stop. Like Mrigari. Narad Muni tells him to use him some devotional service, he does that. That's all. No questions asked. Absolute faith in Krishna. That's how it is. We are meant to come to that point. If we have the desire to come to that point, Krishna will easily find some way to bring us up. But if on the way we say, no, it's getting too much, I'm already doing too much, Okay, then Krishna will tell you, okay, next life, let's see. Or later on, maybe after 10 years, maybe after 1 year, maybe after 6 months. Krishna is hankering for us. If we don't want to hanker for him, we are just continuing our own experience in Dukhalayam Shashvatam. Very, very important to understand that there is Hari, Guru, Vaishnava Seva. Don't separate Krishna's representative from Krishna. Don't separate Krishna's devotees from Krishna's representative or Krishna also. Everything has to, it's one thali, it's one full package. Everything has to be taken as it is. Therefore, we chant Hare Krishna. This is service to Krishna. We engage in deity worship, service to Krishna. We serve Krishna's Dham, service to Krishna. We hear Srimad Bhagavatam, service to Krishna. We also serve Krishna's representatives, the Diksha Guru, the Shiksha Gurus. We also serve Krishna's other devotees. Everything has to be done. Everything put together will give you the result. Not that when you separate it and you take only this, only this, only this, then it will not work. If you say, I will only serve my Guru, I will not focus on chanting, it will not work. If you say, I will only focus on Vaishnava Seva, I will not serve my Guru, or I will not chant Hare Krishna seriously with purity, then it will not work. Everything put together will work. And for all of this, to understand the teachings of the predecessor Acharyas correct, we need to always take shelter of Prabhupada's books. In his books, Prabhupada has clarified the teachings of the predecessor Acharyas, and he has clarified himself also. He himself said, everything that I want to say, I put in my books. So that is how we can progress in Krishna consciousness. When we carry out all of these instructions very faithfully, and we will directly experience, it is verification. We can directly experience that we are progressing. When we do those activities which upgrade us in bhakti, one of those 6 items, we actually experience that. And that is how we get confirmation. Yes, I am on the right path. And when we do any one of those 6 activities which downgrade us, that is also confirmation of another type. Yes, see, now I am regressing. You can progress, you can also regress. It is a fact that when we take to Krishna consciousness and we progress in Krishna consciousness, our karmic reactions are stopped. Prabhupada said it's like a fan, like a table fan. When you turn the switch off, then the fan will gradually stop. Similarly, our karmic reactions will dwindle. That's a fact. But I can always turn that switch on again. Prabhupada also said that. When I go back to material activities, again the karmic reactions will come back. All of this requires careful, mature deliberation and surrender to Krishna's lotus feet, surrender to the lotus feet of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And we should take help from all available sources. The charity of householder is duty. A householder is duty bound to give in charity. Except distributing prasadam, what all charity can be given in a Krishna conscious way? Okay, first of all, householders have several duties. They need to maintain their dependence. They need to do different things. Prabhupada once he said, householder before eating, he has to go out and call 3 times. Is anyone hungry? Is anyone hungry? Is anyone hungry? And if anyone comes, you have to give food. These are all standard Dharma Shastra rules are there. Anyone follows it? And you don't follow it, and then you don't attain freedom from lust, anger, greed, and then you complain, and what is that? I don't follow scriptural rules, regulations that I'm supposed to follow. Then how can I expect freedom from lust, anger, and greed? All these rules, Varnashrama Dharma, Sri Dharma, all of this is to bring us to the point where we become free from lust and anger and greed, the 3 gateways to hell. That cannot, the acharyas are very clear. We cannot come to that point unless we follow those rules that we are meant to follow at our particular status. These things should be done. Lord Chaitanya himself did it. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, you can see, he did it. Submissively carrying out the instruction means humbly. Submissively means submissively, not grudgingly. These are Krishna's insight. Always we should examine, where is it coming from? I have my spectacles. This is a transparent media. So a bona fide representative of Krishna, a bona fide spiritual master, is a transparent media. But what am I doing with this transparent media? Am I simply looking and watching and loving my specs and whatever? No. I put it on in order to execute my purpose. Amito Kangal Krishna Krishna Boli Thai Tava Pache Pache. Just like a beggar asks for money. Oh, give me some money, give me some money, give me some money. We are begging Krishna's representative. Give me Krishna, give me Krishna, give me Krishna. So Krishna's representative is our transparent via media through whom we see Krishna and we serve Krishna. My eyesight is not good and I have to study for my examination. So then, let's say my friend, he buys spectacles and gives me. Now I can study. So now, is the spectacle important? Yes, of course, it's very important. Is it absolutely important? Yes, it is absolutely important. But can I just close my book and I don't need to study and tomorrow I can go for exam and get good marks? But now I have spectacles. This is absolutely important. I got my specs. Now I can close the book. And I can just tomorrow go for the exam, sit for the exam, I'll get good marks. It will not come. So with the help of a bona fide spiritual master, we have to engage in devotional service. There are 64 items of devotional service. The bona fide spiritual master will always train his disciples to engage in service. Tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshina. You know this, Bhagavad Gita. But what is that sevaya? What service is that? That service is service to Krishna. Because a pure devotee of Krishna loves Krishna more than him. So therefore, he will engage all those who like him in Krishna's service, naturally. You naturally, if you love Krishna more than yourself, you will push everyone to serve Krishna only. And we see in Guru Ashtaka also, we see that. Shri Vigrahara, Dhananityanana, Shringara Tanmandiram Arjanadav, Yuktasya. So that bona fide spiritual master himself is engaged in these activities of deity worship. Yuktasya Bhaktamscha Niyunjatopi. And on top of it, he also engages the devotees in Krishna service. So service to a bona fide representative of Krishna naturally means nothing but service to Krishna. Not by imagination. Not that I think, okay, let me give an ice cream to this person and that is service to Krishna. No, by giving this ice cream, are you progressing in Krishna consciousness? Are you progressing in Krishna consciousness? Have you attained a taste for the holy name? Do you feel like increasing your chanting? Do you feel like serving the Vaishnavas? Do you feel that Krishna consciousness should be spread to the non-devotees? Is your lust, anger, greed decreasing? All this working, it's happening. Is it happening? I remember one of the sannyasis used to ask, is it happening? Or simply just you're just doing some process. We engage in a pursuit in order to attain a goal. Goal-oriented Krishna consciousness, not simply doing something. You're doing something, you'll go on doing. What the Maharaj used to say, you go on doing 30 lifetimes, 40 lifetimes, go on doing, that's all. Krishna consciousness means you need to have certain conviction, shraddha. You need to have certain understanding, pragya. You need to have a certain ambition, spriha. You need to engage in certain activities, kriya. All of these aspects are equally important. All of this put together is the pursuit of Krishna consciousness, which can do the greatest good to ourselves. And this is exactly what we want to share with others. Primarily centered on chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. That is our prime center. Who is the author of Ray of Vishnu? There was one Rupa Vilas Prabhu, a Prabhupada disciple. He has written a number of books. Ray of Vishnu, Seventh Goswami. As far as I know, he's a British devotee. He wrote a book on Haridas Thakur also. Good book. The books are good. He has taken the sources. Fine. The sources are quite authentic for Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and others. The Guru says chant, he says read Prabhupada's words, he says worship the deity, he says preach. So we are trying to follow all that. The Guru says, doesn't that itself including satisfying and pleasing Krishna? Yes, provided you confirm that you are pleasing Krishna. It is not simply some activity. You are doing it just like a doctor says. And let's say I'm sick. I was 2 weeks back. And I didn't have COVID. I didn't have symptoms of COVID. But I had the cold. Occasionally I would have headache here, sometimes headache here, and sometimes I would feel tired, but I didn't have all the other things that in COVID you're supposed to have. So I met my doctor and I told him, see, these are the things. Then he gave some medicines and he said, on such and such a day, you will experience such, it'll be like this. Your cold will disappear on such and such a day, and your headache will disappear on such and such a day, and so on. He gave a proper. He's been treating me over a number of years, and he knows. So he told me that. He said the first day this will happen, second day this will happen, and so on. The first day what he said happened. The next day it did not happen. I immediately called him. I told him, no, it is supposed to be like this. It is not like this. Then he said, oh, that means something else happened. Then he investigated. What else did you do? What, did you drink some cold water? Did you do this? Did you do that? Different things he started asking. Then I answered him. And then he gave the same medicine, double dosage. Double or triple dosage, it might be. He gave the medicine with double or triple dosage. And he said, now you take this and tomorrow you're supposed to be like this, like this, like this. And then the next day I confirmed, yes, it was correct. Then he said, okay, it'll take another 4 more days. And this will happen. And exactly like what he said, it happened. Now I was result oriented. It's not simply doing what the doctor says. You have to do what the doctor says in such a manner that you get cured. You have to basically take up the responsibility for curing yourself with the help of somebody who knows better than you how to get cured. That is what is required. Not simply that, I'm just listening to my guru, or I'm listening to my gurus. And so there are some who say I'm listening to my gurus and the devotees and Haribol. What Haribol? Is Artha happening? And then some people come in and say, no, last second before you die, it will happen. This is a post-dated check. Why should I be interested in something which will only give effect before I die? Suppose you have some blood cancer and somebody tells you that I will put you through a medical treatment which will cure blood cancer 1 second before you die. What is the use of that treatment? You need to become freed from lust, anger, greed, and all these. These are basic preliminaries. This is not even Krishna consciousness as such. Before you eat, you're supposed to clean your plate. Lord Vishnu Das Maharaj used to say that. First you clean your plate. Even before cooking, first you clean the vessels. Then you cook. So even that is not happening means what? Niyamagraha. One of the things which creates trouble. I am so interested in the rules and regulations, I'm not even checking whether the goals are being achieved. So we need to, when we are interested in serving the Vaishnavas, the spiritual master, Prabhupada, the predecessor acharyas, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and so on, we need to, first of all, understand. We need to understand. We need to understand that there is a process which is meant to be used to attain a particular goal. You need to have a desire to get the goal, and you need to engage in the activities of the process. The activities of the process, there are things to do, there are things to avoid, and then you are given some allowances, options. Some things you are just allowed. If you want, you can do. So it's a whole thing put together that helps you. And now for all of that, you need to have the right understanding. If you don't have the right understanding, how can you progress? How can you progress? To achieve any goal, you need to have some amount of understanding, and you need to have some basic conviction. You'll find even in the material world, for any material purpose also, you require conviction, understanding, and ambition to attain a particular goal, and you need to engage in particular activities. Everywhere it is there. Calling out 3 times on the street. This is to be done as it is. That you decide. In the Vedic wisdom, that's what it used to be done. Seems impractical. Neighbors will think we are crazy. There may be other ways of helping out. Anyway, this is why you need to consult more advanced devotees who know you and know your situation. And you need to get like-minded devotees who are interested in carrying out the instructions of Bhaktivinoda without bothering about those who are not interested in carrying out Bhaktivinoda's instructions. If you actually read Prabhupada's books and you just decide to do what is stated in the books, things will happen. My Guru Maharaj used to tell me that those who are serious in Krishna consciousness must just, without being disoriented by everything else, they should just do what is written in Prabhupada's books. They should not get disoriented by so many other things, whatever is happening in the movement or amongst non-devotees or about what Prabhupada said outside the books and all that also. Yes. The book it says it, that's it. That alone. Because in the books, Prabhupada is actually speaking exactly what is in his mind. Exactly what is in his mind. You can even do an experiment. Just read the books and carefully think how. This is what it is. Imagine if you had no access to Prabhupada's lectures, tapes, morning walks, conversations, or there were no Prabhupada Lilamrita, nothing. You only had this books. This is the only Prabhupada that you know. Not just Prabhupada, this is the only Krishna consciousness that you know. You read it, you take it seriously. How seriously you will take it? How seriously you will take it? That's actually what Prabhupada wanted. Prabhupada didn't even want his lectures to be transcribed and made, and he didn't want his letters to be publicized and all that. Because he just said those letters are meant for particular individuals. What to do? Now it has come out. Now, in today's world, that is one reason why I am very much focused on getting devotees to read Prabhupada's books. And a number of devotees can only read when you put up a course and create a lot of tension and fear and anxiety through Bhakti Shastri, Bhakti Vaibhava, this, that. Do some dum advertisement and then you get them to do. But my teacher Govi Pranandam also told me the greatest help you can do to ISKCON is make ISKCON devotees read Prabhupada's books attentively. Open their eyes and make them read Prabhupada's books. Right? All of us should be doing this kind of thing. Anattanurti will start happening before initiation also, yes, of course. Otherwise, why would he even be interested in Krishna consciousness? Anattanurti, that stage refers to the stage where most of the anarthas disappear. Madhurya Kadambini, all of these have been well defined. Okay, anything else? Okay. Any further questions we can discuss in Telegram? Anyway, I have answered that question about the spiritual master and so on here itself. So I won't answer it in Telegram again. If any further questions we can discuss on Telegram. Patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha.